Welcome, everyone, to day two of Re-Leaders Reunite. We are so excited that you're back with us. We've got a good amount of people already on the call. So if you're watching this live on LinkedIn, maybe you're on Riverside and you're an email subscriber, or perhaps you're on the World Wide Web and on YouTube. Thank you so much for being here and taking your time to learn from these incredible speakers who are taking the time today to share their knowledge, their experience, their insights from the highest level. Today's opening speaker is the CEO of StoneAge Tools. She is the host of the Reflect Forward podcast, author of Talk with Trust. We just had her in the studio here on Monday. Her name is Kerry Siggins. And I met Kerry, geez, I don't know, Kerry, maybe it was 4 or 5 years ago on a podcast, I want to say. And we were talking a little bit about her story. And folks, I'm sure she may share a little bit about this story, but it's one of my favorites. Talk about rock bottom to CEO success story. This woman has endured trauma, addiction, overcome pressure, and always felt that she needed to prove herself. And so if she's able to share that story, maybe she will, maybe she won't. I don't know. I don't know what the talk is today. I don't want to spoil it, Carrie. But she's definitely someone I would encourage you all to get to know. Once again, the podcast is the Reflect Forward podcast. She's got hundreds of episodes with other CEOs, and she's doing this while running a multi-million dollar company. And when you get to know Kerry Siggins, you don't think industrial grade pressure washing tools. You just don't. But somehow it works. Somehow it fits. And the culture that she's building at StoneAge Tools is one to model. The turnaround story of StoneAge Tools is one to follow. And today, she's organized her thoughts. She's putting it into a new book. I don't want to reveal too many things, but I think it might be releasing later in the year. We might have a pre-launch list in April. And this book is structured around the things that CEOs bear the most burden on. What do I mean by that? In order to be at the highest level as a CEO, you want to make sure, especially if you're a people pleaser, you want to make sure people aren't mad at you, right? You want to make sure that you're having conversations with people. You don't have any grudges. People are in communication and in alignment. And what I've come to find in moderating forums for over 5 years with some of our top Impact CEO members is when I ask them, what's one difficult conversation you need to have and why? It's never a pass. It's always oh, it's with Mark. Oh, it's with my spouse. Oh, it's with the new marketing director who hasn't quite figured it out, and I might have to let him go. Those are the conversations that weigh us down. So, if you're on this call today, Kerry is going to share an entirely new framework that she uses at StoneAge Tools that you can take and use yourself. So without further ado, it's my great distinct honor to welcome back to Re-Leaders Unite, Miss Kerry Siggins.
No, thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate that. Yes, I think it was like 6 years ago. We've known each other for quite some time. It's been fun to watch your journey too. So thank you all for joining me today. Let me share my screen to get my presentation up, and we will get started. All right, so as Kevin so articulately mentioned, I'm sure that you have a conversation that you are avoiding right now. We all do. It's hard leaning into those crucial conversations where the stakes are high, where you have to give an employee feedback or tell a coworker that they hurt your feelings, or maybe, like Kevin said, it's someone in your personal life. I have several right now that I'm avoiding too because I just don't want to have them. And as a CEO, I have to do this all the time. And some of it's easy, right? Course correction in the moment. But some of them are a lot more difficult, like, this isn't working. And even though I have had thousands of these kinds of conversations, I still do not love doing it. I am a recovering people pleaser. And even if you're not a people pleaser, it still is difficult to have difficult conversations. And that's what we're going to be discussing today: how to talk with trust and say what needs to be said in a way that builds trust. So, this is not a class on communication, it is a leadership conversation. Because at the root of it, trust is the foundation of execution, right? We can't do what we need to do in our companies if we aren't executing to our strategy. It's about performance. We can't expect high performance if there is not trust. And without trust, we can't have a phenomenal culture. And that's why these types of conversations are so important. And a lot of us might think, oh, it's a leadership failure if I have to have a difficult conversation, because shouldn't I just have had clear expectations all along? Or shouldn't people just know what they're supposed to do? No, having these difficult conversations is not a leadership failure, but avoiding them is, or doing them poorly is. And when we avoid tough conversations, we are robbing people of valuable information that they need to grow, to expand, to learn. And oftentimes when we withhold feedback, it builds and builds and builds until it explodes out of us in an unproductive way. And I learned this through a piece of feedback that absolutely changed how I lead. You are hard to work for. This piece of feedback came from a senior leader to me. I respected this person deeply. I trusted this person deeply. He was my right-hand man. And it was delivered with anger and without a whole lot of context. And it felt completely out of the blue. I was not expecting it in the moment at all. And this phrase, right, this is a trigger phrase. You are hard to work for. And it did just that. It absolutely triggered me. As soon as the words came out of his mouth, I felt my nervous system go into complete overdrive, right? You've had that happen before where it's like, oh my gosh, did that person just say this, right? My breathing shallowed, my face flushed, my inner critic chimed in. I cannot believe he just said that. Did he really say it? What do I do now? This means I'm a horrible leader, because how could someone I work with so closely say this to me in such an angry way? I did everything in my power in that moment to not cry, and I wanted to cry. This just cuts to the heart of everything I believe. I don't want to be hard to work for. I want to be an inspiring leader. Yes, a disruptive leader, but one who people say, oh, I'm so glad I worked for her. I became not only a better employee, but I became a better human. And that is not what that said. So while I was trying not to cry in that moment, navigating the conversation to come to an end so I could remove myself from it and pull myself together, was so incredibly difficult. This feedback cut so deep, and it still lingers to this day, and it absolutely changed me. And you see, this is what feedback feels like for most employees: painful, especially when delivered this way. This person had been withholding feedback from me for quite some time, avoiding it, until a moment of stress when it came blasting out of him in an emotional reaction rather than a thoughtful dialogue. And even being a confident leader, this just exposed my vulnerability. It cut deep, right? It triggered me. It felt as if my identity as a leader had been threatened. And we leaders often underestimate how exposed these moments of feedback can feel on the receiving end. And as painful as this moment was, what mattered most wasn't what he said. It was how he said it. He withheld this feedback from me because he didn't want to hurt me. He could never find the right time, so he didn't share his frustrations. He minimized his feelings, talking himself out of telling me the truth. These were all stories that he was telling himself, making him delay giving me crucial feedback that I needed that would benefit our relationship, that would make me a better leader. And it's interesting that this withholding of feedback did not come from malice. In the beginning, it came from care. He cared about our relationship. Therefore, he didn't want to tell me how he felt. But over time, his unspoken frustration built quietly. And when this feedback finally surfaced, it did abruptly, and it felt like there was no caring. It felt like there was only malice. The feedback that you avoid doesn't disappear. It accumulates and can release all at once. And we cannot do that to our employees. We can do better. This just happened to my nephew. My nephew is 19 years old. He works at a high-end restaurant here in Durango, Colorado, where I live. It was for his first real job. I remember when he was 15 and he went and applied. And he told the owner of the restaurant, who I happen to know, she told me this story, that he wanted to work at a high-end restaurant because he grew up very poor and he wanted to make money. And he said, I think I should work at a place where rich people come, and rich people come to this restaurant. And she was so taken aback by this thought process, which is true, right? We are absolutely a reflection of the people that we spend the most time with, that she gave him a job at 15 with no experience in a high-end restaurant. He worked so hard to do well. He started out as a busboy, and then he worked the front of the house, and then the chef at the time decided to take him under his wing and teach him how to cook, which is what his true passion is. On Friday, he went in for his shift, and the new chef sat him down and said, we're going in a different direction. Today is your last day. Now you can imagine how shocked he was. He had never received prior feedback around what he could be doing better. There was no warning that he was going to get fired. It just completely took him by surprise. And the most damaging part was not the termination. Of course, this definitely hurt his ego, and he's 19 years old and just moved out of my brother's house, and he's trying to figure out how he's going to pay rent. But as I've been talking to him, what I can see as the most painful is the confusion. He had never been given constructive feedback, so he had no idea what he did wrong or how to improve going forward. This is the lesson. Silence robbed him of the learning. It robbed him of dignity, and it robbed him of direction. He has been tormenting himself, telling himself all kinds of stories about why he was fired. And here's the bigger picture. Many of his coworkers are now fearful that they're going to get fired too with no feedback or no notice. Some are even looking for new jobs just in case this happens to them too. And this is what an unhealthy culture looks like. When feedback is delayed or never even given, it creates confusion. People don't trust management. Some people get fired without having the opportunity to course correct. And some people leave because they feel like the culture is broken. So why does this happen? Leaders often don't give feedback because they think they are being kind. But as Brené Brown says, clarity is kindness. And here's the other thing that your silence communicates. It means it's communicating, I am okay with this. I tolerate this. It means maybe even that you approve of what's going on, or maybe even worse, that you are indifferent to what's going on. This is not kindness. Like I said earlier, when you withhold feedback, you are robbing a person of valuable information that can help them grow, that gives them guidance, that allows them to work on themselves to be a better employee and a better human being. Choosing not to give feedback is absolutely a leadership decision. And not giving feedback also shapes outcomes, probably not in the way that you ultimately want, and it absolutely defines your culture. Look at it this way. Feedback is like navigation. If someone is off course and no one tells them, they never arrive. They get lost. And that's not good for you, your team, or your business. Waiting till the end to speak up is not kindness, it's abandonment. Not doing it Not giving feedback or doing it poorly, like the person who told me I was hard to work for, has an emotional cost for you too. It's not just that employee who feels abandoned, you are abandoning yourself. If you're like me, when you avoid a hard conversation that you know you need to have, you feel stressed, right? You're sitting there spinning on it, going, I just need to have the conversation, but I don't want to have it today, so I'm going to do it tomorrow. And then it diminishes the quality of your evening because having that conversation is sitting in the back of your mind and it just spins as stressed. It sits on your nervous system. You know you need to do it, but you're delaying it. And that just makes like the ickiness of having these conversations drag on. And then if you haven't properly prepared for the feedback, you deliver it poorly because you just want to get it over with. You talk to relieve your own discomfort rather than being curious and asking questions and then listening to what the other person has to say. You make it about you rather than the person you're giving feedback to. And this combination almost always creates defensiveness. Every time I have done this, I blow giving feedback. And this is the last thing you want. You want people to hear what you have to say, not go, oh, no, that's not true. I need to get out of this office, just like I felt when I was receiving that really tough feedback. And then you walk away from the conversation going, see, well, that's validating. The person didn't take it well. This is why I delayed giving it in the first place. And so this is a vicious cycle. And it just repeats over and over again if you don't learn how to give feedback effectively. But the good news is that this cycle can be broken. These are common leadership mistakes. Every single leader has avoided giving feedback or flubbed it in a major way. These are not personal failures. They're leadership mistakes. We aren't taught how to give people feedback. In fact, it's been ingrained in us to not say something if we don't have something nice to say. So it's part of our society to just, nope, don't want to say that. I have to work with that person. I don't want to hurt that person's feelings. I'm not going to say what needs to be said. It might not be perceived as nice. As a leader, it's really important to understand why people take feedback so poorly. And if you have this in your mind, you can overcome it. Feedback can activate flight or fight responses, right? That's where we feel that those nerves. We want to hurry up and get it over with. Or when the employee is sitting there getting feedback, they want to get the heck out of the office as fast as they can. Feedback can even be delivered perfectly, and some people will only hear, I'm not good enough, I'm failing, my boss doesn't like me. This feedback causes the brain to interpret it as a threat to identity, screaming, danger, 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 this is scary, I'm going to get fired. For sure, my career is over. I'm not going to have any money to pay my bills. My wife is going to leave me. All of these major stories that we just blow up in our head because our brain gets hijacked by our emotions. Defensiveness is a protective response. It's not a lack of maturity. We all feel it. Some of us can handle it better in the moment than others, but we all want to protect and defend when we're hearing something difficult. And here's the leadership implication. You may have the best of intentions when giving feedback, but sometimes human biology takes over. And when you understand this, you can stay calm in the conversation and move it forward productively, even if the other person is having an emotional response. So how do you have a productive conversation? How do you move feedback forward? The first tip is to drop the mindset that you are right and that you have a point to make. We do this because we want to justify why we have to give this person feedback. So it's like, these are the things that have happened. I'm right. I need to make a point so this person takes corrective action and we can move on. Instead, I would invite you to look at feedback as a leadership responsibility. Your job is to provide clarity, even when it's hard for the other person to hear. And that responsibility means that you have to own your communication, your delivery, your expectations, and your experience of the person you're giving the feedback to. The goal is to provide clarity and to make progress, not to win conversations. And when you have the mindset of, I can deliver feedback that is direct, clear, kind, and helpful, you can have a better conversation. When you commit to delivering feedback well, you can improve relationships, build trust, and create that mutual respect that everybody's looking for. And that's what a great culture is built upon, mutual respect. shared trust, a commitment to relationships. And delivering feedback well means that you must be intentional, structuring it so that you can create safety in emotionally charged situations, because feedback can be emotionally charged. Even when you think you're giving benign feedback, you don't know how the other person is going to respond. And in those emotionally charged moments, it can be you that starts to feel it, and it can be the person receiving it. And that's why I created the shares model. The shares model is my practical leadership framework for giving feedback. And doing it this way builds trust, drives accountability, and creates growth in real conversations, not ideal conditions. Because let's face it, never when we give feedback is it an ideal condition, or at least we shouldn't assume it will be. The shares model provides leaders with a clear, repeatable way to navigate these high stakes conversations with dialogue, with clarity, with confidence, and with emotional maturity, which is something your employees are looking to you for. They want to see how you are going to respond, show up in these high stakes conversations. At its core, the shares model is about ownership. When leaders take responsibility for how feedback is delivered, how it lands, and what happens next, they can build better relationships with their employees, even when they are sharing feedback that is critical, that might be hard for the person to hear. And when you use the shares model consistently, it replaces fear and avoidance, which are the two main things that we feel when we have to give somebody tough feedback. And it replaces it with clarity, trust, and a commitment to growth. Studies show that about 45% of our decisions are based on our environment and our systems. So that means that the things around us that we aren't even really aware of are impacting how we show up. And that is why we need a strong system in place when dealing with situations that cause our nervous system to go into overdrive. And giving feedback absolutely can do that. The shares model provides structure under pressure. It was built from my real leadership experiences, not from theory. I built this over time because I have screwed up giving feedback so many times. And I had people deliver feedback to me in really tough ways, like the person I talked about earlier in this presentation. And what I love about this is if you implement it within your organization, it gives all of your leaders a shared language to have these difficult conversations. So let's talk a little bit about what the shares model is. So the S is specify your ideal outcome. You need to be clear on what you want different after the conversation. This is not about what you want to say or how you're going to say it, but it's about what success actually looks like when the conversation is over. When you specify your outcome, knowing what you want to achieve from the conversation, it anchors it in responsibility and it prevents your emotion or your ego from taking over. The H is for hold facts and feelings. When you ground your feedback in observable reality while also naming impact, it is so much more powerful. Facts create clarity. This is what I observed. Feelings create context, and this is how it impacted the rest of the team. Holding both keeps the conversation honest and human without letting either the facts being like cold, well, this is just a matter of fact of what happened, or the feelings of taking over of you hurt so-and-so's feelings hijack the moment. The A is for articulate your experience. When you speak from what you observed and how it landed for you rather than assigning intent, like this is the reason why you did it, or making assumptions, you reduce defensiveness and you keep accountability focused on behavior and outcomes. You don't make it personal. That is when most people get defensive, is when it feels personal. So articulating your experience, this is how I experienced this situation, is so incredibly important. The R is for reflect with questions and dialogue. When you invite understanding and ownership through thoughtful questions, you invite dialogue. This is really important because feedback becomes a two-way conversation, which is what you want. You just don't want to go in and line out what the person needs to do without asking them their thoughts on it, without getting their perspective, because that's where insight is really discovered. And if you don't do this, you're imposing your will without making that employee feel safe enough to say, hey, this is how I experienced it. This is what was going on. And it robs you of valuable insight that will help you make better decisions. The E is for endorse a recommendation. When you close the loop by clearly stating what you want to see after the conversation is over, you help the employee understand the path forward. You create a better opportunity for success. This is when you do this, feedback turns into direction and action rather than leaving people with ambiguity. And I have learned that many people are uncomfortable with ambiguity. They need to understand this is what's expected of them, and here is how you are going to support them as they work on this feedback. And then finally, the last S is stay emotionally grounded. Throughout the conversation, you have to regulate yourself. You have to hold steady, especially when emotions get out of control. That person might cry, the person might get angry, but you as a leader have a responsibility to stay grounded and stay calm. Grounding leadership creates safety without sacrificing standards. So put your feet on the floor. Make sure that you're breathing deeply. Pay attention to what's going on in your body. Do not let your emotions hijack your brain in the moment by staying calm and staying grounded. All of these are really important, but if I had to advise you on where to start, I would choose A and R, articulate your experience and reflect with questions and dialogue. These two elements absolutely change the dynamic of giving feedback. Articulating your experience separates facts from assumptions, and it's hard to argue with how somebody experiences you. When you say, I think, somebody could say, well, you're wrong. When you say, I feel, someone could say, well, you shouldn't feel that way. When you say, this is how I experienced you, you are owning the experience. You're owning your perception of what happened. And it allows for the other person to be able to say, oh, that's how you experienced it. I didn't realize I had that kind of impact. It's such an incredibly powerful statement. Here is how I experienced you. Here is how I experienced the situation. I use this all the time, and it is the single most important statement that I think leaders can use when they are having difficult conversations. And then questions. Questions allow for the collaborative and questions allow for collaboration. And this is really important. You want the employee to feel grounded when they leave. And that can only happen if they have a chance to give their perspective, if they have a chance to agree to the recommendation that you put forth, or even better, that you collaborate to put that recommendation together. Dialogue builds trust so much faster than declaring, this is what happened and this is what I need you to do to fix it, and then asking them to leave and go work on it on their own. So let's just dive into each of these a little bit forward. This is how I experienced it is really about owning that perspective without assigning intent. And it lowers defensiveness immediately. And it signals that you have self-awareness and leadership maturity, because you are not causing that person to get defensive by saying, well, this is what you did. I have a story that I want to share that gives an example of how this works. So I had a board member who gave me really tough feedback. It was an emotionally charged situation, and he delivered it incredibly poorly. I processed it, and the next day I went back to him and I gave an emotionally charged response. I said, I think you don't appreciate me being as a CEO and the role that I have in this company. I feel that you disrespected me. You can imagine that did not go over well. I feel. The conversation ended and it was not productive at all. And I left feeling even worse. I was going to go in and advocate for myself, stand up for myself, make sure that he knew how I felt. And it actually damaged the relationship even further. So I paused and reflected and said, I need a reset. How do I use the shares model to have a conversation, to heal this relationship, to understand how his comment made me feel and the impact it had on me, and also to be curious and hear what he had to say so that I could become a better CEO. That's what board members do. They're here to help us be better leaders. So I called him again and I said, hey, I want to own the fact that yesterday's conversation did not go well. I was emotionally charged and I did not clearly express myself. And I wanted to share with you how I experienced the statement that you made in the board meeting a couple of days ago. And then I shared my experience of it. And I said, now I'd really like to understand from you, how did you experience this? And I love this because This reframe helped him see my point of view, and it helped calm him down instead of also feeling like he had to defend what he said. And it allowed us to have a really fruitful conversation. It allowed us to heal the damage that was beginning to happen in our relationship because neither one of us handled these conversations right. Ultimately, the relationship was repaired and we productively moved forward. So this is so powerful. The same truth. He gave me this feedback. He said something that was hurtful. I responded in an emotional way and it damaged the relationship. I came back, had a different conversation. It doesn't change what he said, but we had a completely different outcome with the second conversation using the shares model, simply using this is how I experienced this situation. It undid the damage he did in his initial conversation with me, and it undid the damage that I had when I had an emotional response back to him. Same truth, completely different outcome. The second one, reflect with questions and dialogue. By asking questions, you gain deeper insight, and this is so important. You want to make sure that you have all the context in a situation. And oftentimes when we're giving people feedback, we don't know what their perspective is. And so when you ask questions, you might learn something you didn't know. And when you have this kind of information, you can make better decisions, you can help the employee move forward better, and you can learn more about your culture. So be curious rather than certain. This allows the context to come out. And when you're curious and you ask questions, people feel engaged and they're more likely to be accountable because they feel like, hey, my manager cares. She's asking me questions about what happened, not just assuming that she understands the entire situation. By asking, how did you experience this situation, or how did you experience yourself in this moment, you invite them to share their perspective. And people feel heard when you ask them questions and then you pause and truly hear what they have to say. Jumping to conclusions shuts down learning and erodes trusts. I just had this happen last week. I had to give an employee some really tough feedback. There was a situation that she was involved in. She did not handle appropriately. And so we talked a little bit about it, and she was so emotional. She was so embarrassed by her behavior. And I could see that she was in fight or flight mode. All she wanted to do was get out of my office. Now, for two reasons, I wanted her to stay in the dialogue. Two, I wanted her to understand the seriousness of this situation. So I wasn't going to let her off the hook and just immediately let her leave my office after apologizing. She owned her mistake and apologized for it, but there was deeper context that needed to come out of this conversation. I needed to understand why the situation happened because I was debating on, can this person stay? My trust was broken. So if I understand what she was thinking when this mistake was made, then I will have a better context, better insight, so that I can make a better decision about whether she stays or whether she goes. So I asked her, can you tell me what was going on when you made this decision? And she shared with me some pretty serious things that were going on in her personal life. And she also shared with me that she really struggled working for her manager at the time. That person has since left the company, but she said it was very, very difficult working for him. I did not feel heard. I was so frustrated. I was frustrated in my personal life, and I was frustrated here. She said, I know that does not excuse my behavior, but that was what was going on. And I agree. Stress and pressure are no excuse for bad behavior, but I also am compassionate. Like Kevin shared at the beginning, I too have made lots of mistakes in my life, serious mistakes that have almost killed me. Certainly could have gotten me fired. But because people believed in me and they asked me what was going on and I could provide them that context, they offered me support rather than writing me off. And I want to offer my employees the same thing. So by asking her what was going on, I got more information. I could see where she was at. I could have compassion for the situation. And because of that, and because she fully owned that she made the mistake, I told her, I'm not going to fire you today. And I immediately saw her shoulders drop. She took a deep breath and she was, thank you. Thank you so much. The conversation ended in a very productive way, even though she was still humiliated and still feeling so bad about what she did. At the end, she asked me, can I have a hug? Thank you so much for having this conversation with me. That is the power of asking questions by reflecting, staying in dialogue. Don't be afraid to just rush through it. Ask your employees what's happening. You might be surprised what you'll learn. Every hard conversation that we have presents these choices: courage or comfort, truth or silence, trust or avoidance. Comfort, yeah, it might offer short-term relief, but courage builds long-term trust, and it builds your culture, and it helps you gain the confidence you need to have future uncomfortable conversations. Because that's how we get better at these, is through practice, it's through repetition, it's by leaning into the discomfort and saying, I always choose courage, I always choose truth, I always choose trust, every single time. It is your responsibility as a leader to create these outcomes. So as you reflect on this conversation today, I'd like you to identify one real conversation that you know you need to have. That conversation that you are putting off, that you are avoiding, you don't want to have. And then go through the shares model. Write down how you're going to approach every single section, every single letter within the shares model. Visualize yourself having the difficult conversation and achieving the outcome that you specified. Visualize yourself talking through facts and feelings. This is what happened, and this is the impact. Visualize yourself asking questions and inviting that employee into dialogue. Visualize yourself collaborating on a shared recommendation to move forward. And envision yourself staying calm. Even if that employee gets emotional, you are cool, calm, and collected. It is okay to feel nervous or even afraid to have these conversations. That is what being human is all about. But these feelings of nervousness or fear or whatever might be coming up for you are not validation to avoid the difficult conversation. Instead, use them as fuel to become a better leader, to be a leader who provides clarity, to be a leader committed to your team's growth through giving constructive feedback. Remember, trust is built through course correction, not silence. And then, if you think about feedback as navigation, you're helping people arrive at their very top potential. You're helping them see what they are capable of. Leadership is absolutely built in moments like these. If you'd like to learn more about all of this, my book, Talk with Trust, is going to be out next year. But you can go to my website here at kerrysiggins.com and sign up for my newsletter, which is filled with all kinds of leadership advice and my musings. But I'll announce when the book is ready for pre-order. As Kevin said, we'll be able to have a link for this probably in April. And I wrote this book because too many leaders either avoid feedback or deliver it in a way that creates fear and disengagement. And I've seen firsthand how damaging this can be because I have created that damage. And I've had people deliver feedback to me in such painful ways that it is questioned, am I cut out to be a CEO? And when leaders learn how to give feedback well, it can be so incredibly powerful. And this book is about closing that gap. It gives leaders a practical, human, and repeatable way to have conversations that you know that you need to have, but you are dreading. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I think we have a little bit of time for Q&A. You can also email me at kerry@kerrysiggins.com, which you can find that email on my website here. And I would be happy to help brainstorm, bounce ideas off of you, give you any guidance that you might need on how to have these difficult conversations. Thank you so much for your time, and I would love to take any questions.
Amazing, Kerry. Thank you so much. Yes, we do have a little bit of time for Q&A here today. So if you do have any questions, please just put it in the chat box right there. Once again, kerrysiggins.com. Kerry, first question is this. I was listening to a podcast one time, and they gave not this technical advice, but it was advice to open up a conversation with another employee. And I think because it was so drastically different than my own personal style, the first question the employee had was, am I getting fired?
Yeah.
Why are you talking to me in this kind of tone, in this kind of way? So we just listened to a master class on how to give feedback. If this is so different than someone's personal style, how should they approach that first conversation?
Sure. So I think that your personal style absolutely matters. You need to be you, but also being you doesn't mean that you just get to say this is how I am, and so I'm just going to deliver feedback in a matter of fact way, or I'm going to get emotional. You have to hold yourself accountable to delivering it in the way that the other person can hear, and that can be hard. A lot of times we don't want to do that. So I have a way that I handle really difficult feedback, and I'll tell you how I do it, and then I'll tell you how I should have done it differently with the girl who I just had to give feedback for and told her she wasn't fired. So, when you are going into a difficult conversation like terminating somebody, I always think it's best to be very straightforward at the beginning. And a lot of people want to soften the blow. So they talk about, oh, how was your weekend? What's going on? And, like get the person softened up. And really all it is just delaying having the conversation. I always say, this is going to be a difficult conversation. And today we are terminating your employment, or we're putting you on a performance improvement plan. And I lead with that. Because if a person is sitting there going like, what's going on, and you're kind of like sugarcoating or dancing around it, all you're doing is creating more stress for that person. So just be straightforward. And you can do that in a really kind way. I know this is going to be difficult to hear, and I just want to put it out there that we're going to have a tough conversation today. But what I would like to do is be able to leave this conversation with a shared path forward, and then deliver your feedback. That is so much better. You don't want the person leaving going, God, why did she just spend 10 minutes just chit-chatting with me when she was going to tell me that she was firing me? Now, what I did wrong in my conversation with the young woman that I had to give feedback to on a poor judgment decision that she made is that I asked her what was happening. I wanted to understand the context from her perspective. And that whole time, all she was doing was waiting for the other shoe to drop to say, I'm not going to fire you. Now, I hadn't made that decision. I wanted to see what she said, but I should have said that much sooner in the conversation. It was closer to the end, because as soon as I said, I'm not firing you today, I saw her nervous system drop, and we could have a much better dialogue. And so if I could go back and do it again, I still would have asked those questions because I needed to see if she was going to own it. But I would have told her, thank you for owning it. I'm not going to terminate your employment today. Now let's go into the dialogue about what's happening. And so that would have been I would have created more psychological safety and allowed her nervous system to calm down to have a better dialogue if I would have said that sooner in the conversation rather than closer towards the end.
Love it. Thank you so much for expanding on that. And really, kind of a sub takeaway I'm getting from this is what you talk about a lot, which is regulating your emotions as a CEO. Like it is so important, and there's so many things going on throughout the day, and fires are putting out, and things aren't done. They're not getting done, and this person isn't up to the challenge.
Yeah.
How do you step in and make sure that 2 feet are on the ground and that you can have those conversations?
Okay, practice. Part of the reason why this person told me I was hard to work for was because I didn't always have good emotional management. I thought it was just me being passionate, but people were reading my passion as maybe being aggressive or upset. And so I go into every conversation now going cool, calm, and collected. That is my mantra. How do I approach this cool, calm, and collected? I never go into a tough conversation without the shares model and being prepared. Now, sometimes you might have a difficult conversation that happens where you don't have time to prep. And then that's when I have to say, what is going on in my body right now? So check into with your body. Where am I feeling tight? I'm feeling tight in my chest. Take a deep breath. And really that feeling of feet on the floor, that grounds you. And so it takes practice. I wasn't always cool, calm, and collected. But over time, as I went in with the intention of I have to regulate my nervous system, and I do that by putting my feet on the floor, by taking deep breaths and slowing down my speaking cadence, I can then do a better job of staying regulated, even in a high stakes conversation.
Mm, mm. Now, Kerry, one last question for
Yeah.
you. Businesses, they're different sizes, right? Some
Yeah.
CEOs like to be super involved in these conversations, some maybe not so much. Your thoughts on delegating firing to HR? How have you gone about that process and that decision in StoneAge?
Sure. As the company has evolved, I've delegated it more. When we were much smaller, I was involved with most of our terminations. And now I'm only involved in terminations of my direct reports. Otherwise, it's HR supporting the manager, but we always require the manager to do it because that's how we learn. We
Mm,
can't grow
mhm.
people, and I mean, termination is part of leadership. And it's the worst thing that we have to do as leaders is to tell somebody they're fired. So we can't rob people of the opportunity to do that just because they feel uncomfortable or they haven't had practice. So HR is always involved as a supporting role, but the manager is the person who's leading that conversation. And so that's how we do it now. But for the most part, I'm not involved in I know before anybody gets terminated, I know what's going on. We're still small enough. I think we've got 250 employees. We're still small enough for me to be able to know that. But I don't need to be involved in every termination. But I do require people to prep through the shares model before they go into the termination.
Love that. Well, thanks for giving us an actual framework,
Yeah.
tools that we can kind of dig into, pull out, and use, especially to have a difficult conversation such as that. Let's end maybe on more on a positive note. We won't be talking about terminations the entire time. That's not what this conversation is about. It's about building trust in the organization. You have an interesting experience, going from here to here, in the company. And I see a lot these days when it comes to HR, it comes to performance improvement plans, it comes to how you're supposed to grow and actually become successful. There's a lot of victimhood. There's a lot of blaming the other person. There's a lot of not thinking about what the owner, the someone that's paying me, is to do. It's about me. What are your thoughts on this mentality?
Yeah. Um, oh gosh, ownership. It is the ownership mindset. That's my first book. It is the most powerful mindset that you can have. When you have the mindset of everything is happens because of me or through me rather than things happen to me, you can take control of your leadership. And so owning your leadership, owning how your dialogue, owning how you're showing up, owning the repetitions that you have to put in to have difficult conversations or to become a better leader, whatever it is that you're working on, it's so empowering. It's empowering, not empowering. It's empowering. You have to empower yourself.
Mm,
And then when you embody the ownership mindset of everything happens because of me or through me, then you are role modeling for your employees. Because when you have people who own it within your company, they are there for more than just a paycheck. They are there because they believe in you as a leader. They believe in what the company is doing. They believe that they can grow in the organization, and they're more likely to own it. But if you don't own it as a leader, then there's no way you can build a culture of ownership. So I just think that taking ownership is so incredibly important, and it's the number one mindset that you can have as a leader to change the way you lead and to change how people follow you.
Gary, you're the best. Thank you so much for just taking an hour out of your busy day to be with the Real community here. We're so grateful for you. The chat,
Thank
the
you.
chat room was firing off today. Lots of good and positive comments in there. If you're watching this live on Real Leaders and on Riverside, thank you so much for being here. We're going to be back in just 10 minutes, if you could hold on, with Mark Kohler, former U.S. nuclear submarine officer, who's going to be giving his 5-step framework on fast attack leadership. Kerry, thank you so much.
Thank
We'll say
you.
goodbye, and I'll say a couple quick more things about what's coming up
Yep. Bye,
next.
everyone. Thank you.
Amazing, everybody, amazing. How about that? Talk with trust, 2 feet on the ground, preparing for conversations. A lot of CEOs we speak with, there's this thing going around the internet. It's called imposter syndrome. Have you heard of it? I'm not good enough. Thoughts, voodoo. It's my sign. It's that kind of the season, right? It's things that we don't feel that we can do because of external forces. That's not what Kerry Siggins said today. It's about ownership. It's about taking ownership and control of what you can control. Imposter syndrome is simply being not prepared. So preparing for tough conversations and difficult conversations with employees that need to be had gives you confidence, makes you feel like you're not an imposter. There's a drought of leadership going on in the world. Just look online. Look online. Look what people are saying about how to become successful. And everyone that's tasted success knows exactly how they got there. Hard work, preparing, taking ownership. It's a tale as old as time, and we keep having to tell it, and it's really unfortunate. Moving on today, speaker number 2, I just mentioned a little bit earlier. His name is Mark Kohler, former officer of a U.S. nuclear submarine. Have you ever been growing a company and maybe you're an entrepreneur, maybe you're trying to figure out what to do, where to go, how to transform the company, take it to the future? Sometimes it's not about vision. Sometimes it's just making a damn decision. And when the stakes are high, being on a nuclear submarine, that is, when the enemy is coming at you, you don't have time to think about vision. You need to take action. And that is what we'll be talking about here today with Dr. Mark Kohler. In fact, he's just joining us right now. Doc, Mark, Mr. Kohler, you're already on. You're early.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's okay. Hey, let me give you a proper intro at the top of the hour. We'll get back to you. How about that?
Yeah, that's great. So one question is, in sharing, I have some video that has audio in it.
Absolutely.
I've not used Riverside for that, but
And Mark, we're actually live right now. Let me just go ahead and
Okay.
wrap this up, and I'll come right back to you.
do you want me?
Sorry, Mark. Yeah, no, Mark, you're good. Just stay right there. We're to bring you right back. Don't worry, folks. This is our first year live streaming on Riverside here. So we'll be just back in about 8 minutes with Mark Kohler. Go ahead and grab your coffee. Come on back at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Again with Mark Kohler, 5-step framework on fast attack.